Hello, everyone, from the Matt Morris Digital Studio here in Fresno with the sports director of KSEE24 CBS47 and the voice of the SEC Rams, Scott Bemis. I am Dean Schiro. Thanks for being here today. We got a lot to talk about. College football starting to wind down towards the end of the year. Things are getting exciting. We had some more things happen last weekend in the Mountain West that kind of gave the Dogs a little bit more hope now for the Mountain West title. We're going to talk about that for a second. But a huge game with them, Valley Children's Stadium, 7:30, Utah State coming to town. Your thoughts, Scotty?
Well, it was interesting. We got a printout and Mountain West championship game scenarios from Savannah over with Fresno State Media Relations this week, and it was kind of interesting to look at it because there is still a way that Fresno State could host the Mountain West championship game.
I believe it requires 2 San Diego State losses.
Yeah, this is all that needs to happen, Dean.
Okay.
San Diego State lose their final 2 games.
Yes.
New Mexico lose to Air Force, and UNLV lose once, and then Fresno State's hosting the championship game.
There you go. Oh, and Fresno State's got to win twice.
Yeah, I was about to say. Now, maybe the hardest part of that is that Fresno State's got to win twice.
Sure.
Because nothing's easy for this team this year. They're winning, right? But they're grinding it out. Defense in the running game, at this point. And so, last game was kind of interesting with the weather and everything else against Wyoming. Kind of sloppy out there and a wet turf and wet ball and all that stuff. And so this week, looks like the weather's going to be better against Utah State.
Yes.
Utah State has a much better offense than Wyoming has. And so I think the Dogs are going to have to score a little bit in this game if they're going to want to get the W. The question is, can they score enough?
I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. Stay tuned because Scott and I both have plays on this game later on in the show. Just looking at the scenarios, though, Carson Conklin did play better last week. Seems like he's getting a little better each week. What do you see as the method of operandi success for Fresno State this week?
Well, I don't think this Fresno State team is going to go from being a team that's struggling to throw for 100 yards in a game to suddenly throwing for 350.
Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the formula is going to be what the formula has been. Running the football, protecting the football, and letting your defense, control the game, try to play from in front so that you can stick to that ball control. Maybe, Carson Conklin continues to develop a little bit where you pick up a couple third downs that maybe you weren't able to get before and you kind of keep the chains moving.
Sure.
Dylan Lynch could be big in this game. As far as field goals go for Fresno State, probably need to have a good game from Dylan. My guess is he's going to get probably 3 or 4 opportunities in this game. And, if he can go 3 for 3 or 4 for 4, those are points that could be absolutely needed in this game. And then defensively, it's a good test for Fresno State because the last 2 opponents, because the Boise quarterback Madsen went out early,
right.
They have seen really not very high level quarterback play from their opponents. The backup for Boise was a freshman or redshirt sophomore, can't remember what he was exactly, but making it basically his first significant time playing quarterback at Boise, and he looked a little bit overwhelmed by the situation, especially against that Fresno State defense. This last week against Wyoming, the quarterback play wasn't great. I mean,
right.
The starter completed like 6 of 23 passes in that game. Now, some of that has to do with Fresno State defense. Absolutely. And the corners for this Bulldog team, I think, are really locking things down. They're getting a nice push up front at times. And then that linebacker core has, those 2 guys, Jaden Pearson, Titus Kajabi in the middle. To start the year, it was Kavion Thunderbird.
Right.
He was playing at a high level.
Yes.
They've got a lot of guys who are playing well on that defense. And so, I think the key is what it is a lot of times with a football game, right, Dean?
Right.
If you don't turn the ball over, you're probably going to have a good chance of winning the game, especially with the kind of defense that Fresno State has.
Right. One other thing to mention, too, like we said, we brought all the scenarios up about a possible Mountain West Championship game at Bulldog Stadium. Very improbable. So for a lot of these seniors, it is senior day. Yeah. They'll be wearing the white unis with the green. Everyone knows how I feel about that. It's fine. I'll survive.
Is it really fine?
I'll survive.
Okay,
Anyone who saw the last show or 2 shows ago, you saw how I thought. I like the traditional red. I like the traditional blue and black, but so be it. So Utah State will be in there. I'm guessing they're going to be in their blues, and Fresno State will be in their white. But it's senior day. Let's just talk a little about some of these seniors like Cam Braca, some of these guys who have done such a great job with the program over these last years.
Yeah, it would have been fun to talk with Cam on Tuesday. That's when the players are made available. Unfortunately, Cam had some classes that he had to get to, which we totally understand.
Sure.
So he wasn't available. But the week before, he was out there talking, with a couple members of the media. I didn't request him personally, and he was already getting emotional. Like, the week before, right? Before the Wyoming game. He was over there talking. He says, I can't believe I told myself not to get emotional.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine the type of emotions that he's feeling, because he's a true local kid.
Absolutely.
Out of Buchanan High School.
Yep.
I got a chance to watch him for a couple years at Fresno City College. When he was just terrific.
Got to broadcast his games.
Yeah, gotten to know the family a little bit too.
Sure.
Fantastic family. And Cam Braca, just a fantastic young man. I mean, he is a gem. And the Valley should be very proud to have him, and Fresno State should be very proud that he is a captain and a team leader for this squad. But yeah, it's going to be their final home game. It's going to mean a lot. I mean, there's 26 seniors.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, and
you don't see that these days anymore.
Yeah, and I don't even think there's even a few seniors who aren't even getting honored in this game. By the way, EJ Warner's
he's
not
going
to be introduced.
Yes.
Which I can kind of understand, from his point of view.
Sure.
Probably the season hasn't really played out the way that I think he had hoped. And so, I mean, yeah, that's emotion. And sometimes you got to be careful, right? Not to have too much emotion in these things.
Absolutely.
Like pregame, and you can spend it all, and then suddenly it almost feels like you've already been through everything before you've even kicked it off.
And that's 14-0 Utah State, and you're like, what happened? So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Exactly. But they want to send the seniors out with a win. Yeah,
but Cam Braca, though, I just got to mention, though, every time if you listen to our good friend Paul Loeffler and Coach Hill on the radio, their voices get a little emotional when they talk about those two, with good reason, because with Braca in particular, just because he's such a great kid. Buchanan Bear, like you said, Valley kid, plays tough. He's exactly what you would want a Bulldog to be, in my opinion. So the way he plays the game.
And then there's some guys, it's getting rarer and rarer, Dean, right? For players to be at one school for the entire time, and Cam has been in the Valley the entire time, but he hasn't been at Fresno State because he wasn't recruited by Fresno State out of high school. But a guy like Julian Polenda, who we talked to, we saw him speaking to the team after practice on Tuesday. He's a sixth-year offensive lineman. He's finally getting a real opportunity this year, and you could see what it meant to him. To be a Bulldog and to be a Bulldog for 6 years. Like Jaden Pearson, for example, right? I mean, obviously, he's got roots in the Valley, played at Reedley, but he also went out and played at a couple different schools. And it's going to be an interesting game for him on Saturday as well, because he's going up against his former team, because he was at Utah State, most recently. And so I'm sure he's going to know a ton of guys on that team. But I'm sure it means a lot to him, but I kind of sense it from guys who have been Bulldogs from the time they arrived, here, out of high school, and now here it is 6 years later. I mean, that is a long time. Jordan Brown, wide receiver, former walk-on. He is a guy who actually, his first time on Valley Children's Stadium on the field,
right,
he was running across as a student.
That's crazy.
In that opening game where they let the students, race out there, and then he ended up earning a spot on the team through like a tryout process and everything else. And here he is, a seventh-year senior now, and now he's playing in his final game. In 7 years, Dean, that's 3/4 of a decade.
Yeah, they're called doctors, right? Anyway, let's come on in hot. All right, Scotty, well, coming in hot, we like to have a take that we're passionate about. There's been obviously a couple big stories going on this week. One of them we mentioned on an earlier show, but I just had to kind of throw this out there. All this stuff about Shedeur Sanders starting at quarterback for the Browns, and Stefanski, the head coach, not giving him a single rep with the ones until he got into his first game. So there's just a lot of stuff about that. I just wanted to kind of throw this question out there, and I'll let you kind of answer it first. Who has worse management? Is it the Dallas Mavericks or the Cleveland Browns? If so, who, and explain. Not putting you on the spot or anything.
Yeah. What a question. What a positive. This is a great sports talk radio question. Who is worse? Who is the worst management operation in all of sports?
I'm
Go,
sorry.
Scott.
I'm
Go.
sorry. Should I have said better?
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Kevin Stefanski is, it seems like when you listen to people, like, people want to buy into Kevin Stefanski, right?
Yeah.
I can't tell you one way or another, why he is necessarily a great coach or a bad coach. I mean, sometimes you are what your record says you are, right? And I guess so, his resume is not that sparkling at this point as a head coach of the Cleveland Browns, but he hasn't had a lot to work with. But you would think that he would not be there still, right?
Right.
If everybody was as down on him as they are, right? So I don't know. There's something there with Stefanski. I think that if they could get the right guys in the mix, perhaps they could get it going. I mean, this whole thing with Shedeur, I guess. I don't know how the reps break down, at practice normally. How many reps at this point in the season does a backup quarterback get?
Not many, Scott. Not many. I mean, I've done some research on it too, but usually the 2 and the 3 at least get a couple. Usually it kind of breaks down kind of maybe like 80, 15, 5 kind of a thing. So, the fact that he hadn't gotten any all year and that the offensive lineman didn't know the snap count. My point on the Browns, though, I just want to kind of say, they had 4 quarterbacks to start the year, 2 with a lot of experience that they dumped, Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. They got rid of Kenny Pickett before the year started because of Deshaun Watson being injured. And then the Joe Flacco situation, trading him to the Bengals, and he's kind of flourished since then. Then you leave 2 rookies. You leave Dylan Gabriel, poor Dylan Gabriel too, I will say. You leave him on an island. And then Shedeur Sanders, a 5th-round pick, you leave him on a true island if something happens to Dylan Gabriel. So I'm just throwing that out there. And then with the Dallas Mavericks already, I'm referring to the Nico Harrison trading Luka Doncic. And then the Anthony Davis part, I don't know if you heard the latest, but apparently the Mavericks now are floating Davis's name out there in trade rumors because of his injury status, which the Lakers could have told the Mavericks he gets injured a lot.
Yeah,
so he's a great player when he's on the court. But I'll let you start.
Yeah, as far as who has the worst management, I think maybe a better way to frame it is who has made the worst management decisions, at this point, right? And I think the Dallas Mavericks are leading the charge.
They're in the clubhouse?
In that department. And they've got a big lead in the clubhouse at this point because they basically traded away a franchise player, right? And here we are 2 years later, and it's going to be funny to see if they do eventually unload Anthony Davis, what that ends up being. You're going to end up trading Luka Doncic for whatever you kind of get for Anthony Davis, right, at this point. And that's going to be pennies on the dollar of what you should have gotten for Luka Doncic. And just the fact that you would kind of stake the future of your franchise on Anthony Davis, somebody who has been as injury prone as his, it just doesn't speak very highly to Nico Harrison. But I will say they have moved on from that. So at least they're starting to kind of, I think, try to get the rebuilding process going. I'm guessing they're probably looking long-term now about building around Cooper Flag.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
When it comes to the Browns, the only thing I'll say here is that, and again, I don't have a ton of knowledge about the inner workings of the Browns franchise. I'm trying to remember, is it Jimmy Haslam who's the owner of the...
Not sure on that one. I probably should have looked that up. I just kind of stopped at Stefanski because that's usually that's where all the heat's kind of pointed right now. But it looked like there was a disconnect between ownership and coaching when it came to drafting quarterbacks in this last draft, the 2025 draft.
We've talked about it before. If you're going to draft Dylan Gabriel, why then draft Shedeur Sanders?
Right.
Yeah, and so that is a question that will remain out there. As far as why are you picking up 2 quarterbacks in the 3rd to 6th round range or whatever it is.
Within 3 rounds of each other.
Yeah, I mean, 2 rounds of each other. Now you got a logjam there, right?
Yes.
And what are you doing unless you think they're you're eventually going to unload one of them in some capacity,
which is what people kind of thought at first.
Right. I mean, I will say this. The Browns aren't going anywhere, even if Joe Flacco's their quarterback or Kenny Pickett's their quarterback.
Right.
So, in my opinion, if you can get something of value for Joe Flacco, I have no problem with that.
Right.
And, if you're the Browns, basically you're trying to stockpile things right now. You've got an incrable defensive player that you can build around.
It's a shame because that defense is pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean, Myles Garrett is arguably, arguably the best defensive player in the league, I guess, at this point, right? I'd have to look at
who else
he'd be matched up against, right? But if you can... My guess is they're kind of sort of tanking, without really trying to tank, but kind of tanking.
Sure.
Still trying to win, but, getting rid of guys and building for the future that if we happen to lose games, not the end of the world, so that we can have a higher draft pick. And maybe at some point here, we can really hit on a quarterback. I don't think they drafted Gabriel or Shedeur, considering where they drafted them, thinking that these were the franchise guys.
Yeah, and the ironic thing is they're playing a team this week that probably should have drafted a quarterback in the Las Vegas Raiders, which didn't. So we'll see what happens there.
Whole nother discussion there. Yeah.
So we're going to move on. We've got 3 to see really quick. College football to start. Not a lot of great games, but there's 3 I thought that were pretty good. I kind of picked them, so I'll let you go. The USC Trojans having a great year under Lincoln Riley. Finally the year that a lot of Trojan fans like us have been looking for. Now they go to Eugene to play the Oregon Ducks. We've got Pitt at Georgia Tech and BYU at Cincinnati. So we'll start with USC and Oregon. So a lot of hoopla on this game, a lot of implications on this game for both teams. So Scotty, what are your thoughts on USC at Oregon?
Well, it's kind of fun, right? That you have a meaningful football game involving teams with losses this late in the year. I've talked about it before, but I think this is what's been really good about the 12-team playoff is that a game like USC at Oregon suddenly carries huge implications, right? In the past, it would usually just be a game that maybe for bowl positioning.
Right.
Like, I don't even know if Oregon would be in the discussion at this point for, in the old BCS scenario.
I don't think so.
Probably not, right?
I don't think so.
But now they are, and USC's on the fringe of it too. And if you go into Eugene and you get a win,
right.
Now suddenly you're probably in the playoff.
Right.
I mean, or at least you got an argument. You're going to be in the mix with some other teams there.
Yeah.
And don't be surprised. I just got a feeling. I wasn't willing to pull the trigger on SC in this game.
Okay.
I just got a feeling though, especially getting nearly double digits in this game. I think that's what the line is.
Yeah, I believe so.
I think SC's gonna be very competitive in this game, and I think this game's gonna come down to the wire. I think we saw something last week, the way that they pulled that game out against Iowa. Probably a game that maybe they don't win in the past.
I think
right?
they lose that game last
with Lincoln
year.
Riley.
Yep.
But they find a way to win, and you saw the emotion from Lincoln Riley on the sideline. And I think this team, is going to be ready to play this weekend. Now, just because you're ready to play doesn't mean you're going to go in and you're going to beat Oregon in Eugene. But, does Oregon really have, when you really look at their schedule, like a great win this year? Because the one game that we gave them a ton of credit for was the win at Penn State. But now looking back on it,
right.
It's really not that great of a win, right?
No.
So
struggled against Northwestern to kind of put them away on the road. I agree with you. I mean, 9.5 point dog. We were going to do our dogs of the week in a second. Could that possibly be? We'll see. So,
ooh, I'm sensing something coming over there from.
I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I'm still marinating on that one. So, all right, we got two more. We got to get to really quick. So we got Pitt at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, obviously, still alive. Got that exciting win last week in Chestnut Hill against Boston College. Pitt coming off the tough loss at home to Notre Dame. The ACC is kind of wide open right now. You've got teams like Miami who are in the college football playoff, but not in the ACC championship game as of right now. So, what are your thoughts, really quick?
I was looking at that. I mean,
today. Seriously.
Yeah, that was interesting. I think Georgia Tech got their scare last week. Doesn't it seem like every year, Dean, in the ACC, now that Boston College is in the ACC, that like in November, one of the leaders of the ACC goes to Chestnut Hill and they seem to like get challenged by Boston College out of nowhere.
Yeah.
In that night environment, it's really dark on television, watching games, at Penn State. It just looks like a tough environment for like Florida teams or teams from, South Carolina or North Carolina.
Yeah.
But Georgia Tech survived it. They found a way, and they've survived a couple times this year. So I think they're going to have the full attention of their coaching staff this week. I think, obviously, Pitt's still got a ton to play for as well.
Sure.
But ultimately, it comes down to, who do I trust more? Haynes King, a guy who you think should be in the Heisman conversation.
I do.
I'm a big fan of his as a quarterback. Can run it, can throw it. Or a freshman quarterback for Pitt, who has shown some signs, but when it really came to, playing a top-level elite team last week in Notre Dame, he struggled.
I agree. And then really quick, BYU at Cincinnati. So we've kind of flirted with some stuff with Cincinnati this year, and they've kind of let us down, both of us. BYU, played really well this year. They lost that tough one in Lubbock, which a lot of teams have lost in Lubbock this year. So a lot to play for, though, in the Big 12 right now on that game. Who do you like in that one?
I like BYU there.
Yeah. Okay.
I just think, I don't know, since he's a weird team, at times this year, that offense has looked really, really good with Brendan Sorsby, but he's, for some reason, has really struggled the last couple of weeks. Some of it's probably the competition as well, going to play at Utah, and then, playing a surging Arizona team last week. I think BYU at home, right? No, that's at Cincinnati.
It's at Cincinnati.
Okay. So the only wild card there, I would say, is that it is going to be senior day for Cincinnati.
It is.
They're coming off a couple losses.
Yep.
But I still think BYU, just that toughness, that grittiness that Kalani Sitake has with that program, will be enough, because unfortunately Cincinnati, at times the offense could look really good, but that defense just, it's a little porous at times.
Agreed. All right, so dogs of the week. This is Scott and I do this thing. Dogs of the week. At least a field goal underdog or better. We prefer a little bit higher to either outright win or at least cover. So Scott,
this is someone
you're
we
staying
think,
in the ACC this week.
This is someone Dean, I would say that we think can pull off the actual win, right?
Okay.
Or like we think there's a good chance of it. And actually, I'm going in the Big Ten this week.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I'm going in the Big Ten.
Okay.
Wisconsin is getting 7.5.
That's right.
I think they're like plus 280 on the money line. I think something like that.
Yeah, 7.5 point underdog.
Yeah, underdog at home against Illinois. Wisconsin has been playing better football since they announced that Luke Fickell was coming back, and so that's kind of an unusual thing, right? Where, so often we're talking about coaches on the hot seat, this and that, and in this, get rid of them quickly era that we're living in, as far as just like get rid of the coach and start over.
Right.
Wisconsin is staying the course with Luke Fickell, and you can debate whether that's a good move or not.
Right.
But I think teams and with inside that locker room, inside those offices, they appreciate that. They appreciate an administration, sticking with a head coach, someone who may be struggling, give them another year. And since then, Wisconsin has played a little better, right? They beat Washington at home. They hung around with, was it Ohio State? I think that they hung around with Indiana.
Indiana.
They hung around with Indiana for longer than probably most people expected last week. And Illinois is a team that is a good team, but not a great team. So I think going into Wisconsin late in the year, this could almost be like a bowl game type scenario for Wisconsin, because they're not going to be going bowling this year. And so I think they'll get up for this game. And I think anytime you go on the road at Wisconsin, there's a chance that the Badgers could find a way to win.
All right. Well, I'm going to stick with my Sam Houston State team, who actually got me a win
2 weeks in a row.
I'm going to stick with them.
With Sammy Houston.
I'm going to ride them one more time. They're going to Middle Tennessee State. They're a 6.5 point underdog. And I'm going to give you just 2 to watch out for. I'm not going to call these official plays, but NC State at home against Florida State getting 5.5, and Florida at home against Tennessee getting 4.
Yeah.
Florida has a history of beating Tennessee in Gainesville, so we'll see what happens there. All right, we got our 3 to see really quick in the NFL. We've got Colts at Chiefs, Eagles at Cowboys, and Bucks at Rams. Let's start with Colts at Chiefs. Colts, obviously, with Daniel Jones this year. Jonathan Taylor coming off the bye. Now they go to Kansas City. Kansas City's kind of on a rough slide. I think they're 5-5 overall, if I'm not mistaken. So
they'd be out of the playoffs if the playoffs started today.
So what are your thoughts on that game?
Well, I thought last week was the time where the Chiefs were going to kind of circle the wagons and, take care of Denver and say, okay, hey, we've got to turn it on. I mean, we're 5-4, whatever they were at this point in time.
Right.
If we want to stay in this division race, we got to win this game. And they didn't get it done, right? So here we go. Another situation where basically their season is slowly starting to be on the line here in some of these games. So I would lean Chiefs just for that reason. I think back at home, they're feeling the sense of urgency,
Yes.
I would think.
Yes.
I like the Colts. I can't completely buy into them as like a legitimate Super Bowl contender yet, so my lean would be Chiefs.
Yeah, game's at Geha, so I'm going to go with the Chiefs as well. Eagles at Cowboys. Cowboys, they survived the over the week, which you'll see on Bemis' thing here in a minute. But the Cowboys playing better ball, beat the Raiders, and the Eagles are still the Eagles. So your thoughts on this one?
Cowboys are kind of an interesting team right now. Now you got to remember it's the Raiders, right? So like when we see those Monday night games, they're standalone games, and suddenly we start going, oh, wait a minute here, because the Cowboy offense was kind of moving the ball at will, and you got Quinnen Williams in there now on the interior for the Cowboys, and Kenny Clark, and it looks better. But remember, it was the Raiders. And I kind of have to remind myself of that because I sort of want to get a little excited about maybe what the Cowboys are doing. And we'll find out, I guess, this week, because when the Eagles come in, we'll find out, hey, are they really, making strides defensively mainly?
Right.
Because that offense has been there all year long. And so this will be a good test to see where the Cowboys are at.
Yep. I like the Eagles to go in there and get it done. Just think Jalen Hurts too much. Bucks at Rams. So, again, the Bucks are still kind of injured, but they still have Baker Mayfield. And anytime you have Baker Mayfield, you got a chance. So, coming to SoFi, the Rams escaped the Seahawks last week. So, your thoughts on this one?
Well, if you're in Fresno, have an opportunity to go to this game, this would be a fun game to go to, wouldn't it? The Rams, with Matthew Stafford, and then you got Baker Mayfield, like you're saying, one of the most exciting players in football, I think, to watch. Both good and bad sometimes, but there's been more good than bad, definitely, this season. I think this will be an entertaining game. Rams at home, I would always lean that way right now. I think the Rams are trending towards a legitimate Super Bowl contender this season. And, with Matthew Stafford there, Devontae Adams, obviously, Nakua, all the guys.
The 2 running backs, Yeah,
they've got a nice mix, and they've got, defensively, they're solid as well. I think that's where the Bucs ultimately, are going to have to kind of prove. Hopefully they're going to get a little healthier here as the season goes on. They've just had a ton of injuries.
There's so many receivers down and stuff. Even SJM zone, Jalen McMillan still not playing.
And by the way, last week with Sean Tucker, I almost made it my coming in hot. Sean Tucker is the reason that star running backs don't make the kind of money that star quarterbacks do, right? Because here he is.
Good point.
It's Sean Tucker, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, hey, oh, Bucky Irving, what's going on? Then Sean Tucker is there, and he looks like the best running back in the NFL.
I know.
You can plug and play, it seems like, so many running backs. I don't want to discount because there's guys like Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, guys like that.
Right.
Unbelievable talents and everything else.
Right.
But it seems like you could find running backs who could step in, third-string guys, and suddenly look like, Pro Bowlers.
Blake Horn for the Rams, plays well when he gets in the game, for sure. So, all right, well, let's get to our money plays. All right, guys, well, money plays. There's one sentence to sum up this week. One of us was perfect and one wasn't. So let's start with Mr. Perfect.
Lucky.
Mr. Perfect.
Mr. Perfect.
Yellow's good. Yellow's good. He
Paul
went from
Orndorff, wasn't it Mr. Perfect? Paul Orndorff?
Okay. Yep.
There we go.
Paul Orndorff.
Knowledge
Very good. But look at my man here. He jumped up $100. He survived the Cowboys Raiders under, which I was laughing about because the Cowboys had the ball twice inside their 15 in the last 5 minutes of the game.
That was amazing.
Ended up taking a knee with 3.5 minutes left. And that's when I knew that my week was over at that point. And then the VCU basketball was a nice pick as well.
The VCU never in doubt. So I'll take credit for that one. Cowboys, Raiders. Hey, in order for Bemis to go undefeated, based on my track record, you need to get incredibly lucky.
That was a good one. Yeah.
Cowboys
twice inside the 15 and
not
both
only
times.
Inside the 15, but like inside the 5 with 2.5 minutes to go.
And take a knee.
And taking knees.
That's classic
taking knees because I think of the respect that the two coaches had for each other. Thank goodness for that, right?
That's just the classic Dean Shiro bad beat right there. All right, here's what Scott's got 5 plays. He's got a couple more bonus ones for basketball. Go.
Okay, all right. Virginia Tech, here's the deal. James Franklin hired this week. Mm-hmm. They're going to want to impress for the new coach.
Sure.
Senior day.
Yes.
Okay, lot going on there at Va Tech. Kind of going to be like their bowl game. Miami, like you mentioned, struggled a little bit at times on the road this year.
They've had 2 true road games. They've won 1 by 6 and lost 1 by 6. So you're getting 17.5.
So give me the Hokies there. All these bets are going to be to basically, for $50 or so to win 50. Hawaii, great offense. Hawaii's really been coming on. They're playing like maybe maybe arguably the best team in the Mountain West right now.
Yep.
UNLV's defense has struggled at times.
Yep.
I like getting points there, so give me the Rainbow Warriors.
Yep.
Going to do a money line parlay here with Georgia Tech and Arizona.
Like both those teams.
I think I can't see them losing, on Saturday. So let's tie them together and try to win a little bit at a plus money
There's
price.
our barking dog right there, number 4.
Give me Wisconsin against Illinois. Getting over a touchdown. The over-under is only like 40 in that game.
Yeah.
When you're getting over a touchdown in a game where there's supposed to be very limited points, it's usually considered good value. So give me the Badgers. And then until Fresno State passes for more than 100 yards in a game or has over 300 total yards in a game again, I'm going to be on the under if you've got a total that's over 50.
I like it.
And so give me the under in Fresno State, Utah State.
And then your 2 other plays really quick.
Yeah, even though you give me your plays and I'll find
really quick. All right, so I just want to go over my 0 for 6 really quick. I just want to point out one thing. On number 3, the basketball, the Oklahoma City Thunder were up as many as 30 against New Orleans. And then Jeremy Fears decides to score a bucket, a layup, uncontested, with 2 seconds left to get the final score to 17. It was a 17-point margin. That would have saved my entire week. So really quick, I've got 10 plays. I got too many to go over. I just want to kind of mention a lot of football, a lot of college football, some pro football on there. Just try to get a screenshot of it. I got a couple money lines. I got a couple spreads. So I got a college basketball on number 1. Too much to kind of go over now, but take a screenshot, use what you guys want, and let's get back to Scott. He's got to play real fast.
Yeah, I noticed you had a little bit of college basketball mixed in. We're dipping our toes into that now here. We're getting into holiday tournament time. There's going to be a ton of games on.
Yeah, we're in the Bahamas.
Yeah, tonight. So here we go. Wake getting over a 10 versus Texas Tech. A tournament in the Bahamas, right? Wake's a good team. They almost beat Michigan. I like Texas Tech, but do I like them laying 10.5 in a tournament neutral site?
Right.
No, give me Wake there, plus 10.5. Plus, I'm going to take a 5.2 team teaser. I'm getting creative here, Dean.
I like it.
On DraftKings, looking at how we're doing it.
I like it.
So here's the key here. These games are being played in Kansas City.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Nebraska. They're going to travel well. It's going to be like a home game for Nebraska there against New Mexico. Yep. Kansas State also playing, going to be like a home game for them. Give me both of them with a teaser. I'm getting 5 more points than I should be getting. Both got to cover for me to win.
All right, Scotty's going to be out next week. I'll have a guest host on Monday, and we're going to have a best of show on Thursday for Thanksgiving. On behalf of Scott, I'm Dean. This has been the Beam and Dean Show.